That's not how trials work, bro. Like, let's just be very clear.
Like even when that was happening, I remember that the episode, the chicanery episode for Better Call Saul. When I saw it, I'm like, dude, I am the furthest thing away from a lawyer, and even I can tell you right now, I'd be writing to the AMC right now angrily. I'd be like, you scumbags.
No, but he actually put Huel on the witness list. Okay, he was on the witness list.
And then he got the witness to commit a crime.
Yes, he did. Well. No, it's technically not a crime. It's reverse pickpocketing. Okay, he put something in his pocket, which is not a crime.
Okay, all right.
It's generous. I say it is.
What, did Netflix hire you to correct this on my bias? Jesus Christ.
Hey, I love that episode, okay? It's like my favorite episode of television.
It's a good episode. But, Andrew, you raise a great point. Too, like, as somebody in the profession, you're a bard, like, you know,
right.
You're a lawyer.
Yeah, Florida attorney.
I'm glad that you say that you have specializations and you don't like to speak out of pocket. It's the same thing with, like, even in our business too, right? Like when I talk about like computer science and everything, like I straight up tell them like cybersecurity, like the speciality. That's why I don't talk about like another completely different field in the world of computer science, because it's not something that I'm educated. I might have some slight understanding more than the average person, obviously, but I'm not trained, or I'm not, like, you know, properly equipped to discuss certain things. So I'm glad that you also agree, and you also say, like, because there's so many people on the internet, there's so many doctors that I see who just pretend to be like medical experts on everything. And it's funny because I talked to my dad. My dad's a cardiologist, so like people think it's like, oh, that's like the top tier doctor. And my dad's like, yeah, dude, I know about hearts and shit, okay? But if you ask me about the brain, I'm literally brain dead. If you ask me, I can't answer it.
That's like when you see, like, I don't want to get into conspiracy territory, but when you see, like, you know, doctors on, like, YouTube doctors talking about how the vaccine works.
Oh, the Rona, yes. Yeah, no, but that was actually the worst, because during that, and I actually got a strike over this, like, the doctors that knew what they were talking about and said, yeah, that's bullshit, right? Those got in trouble, right? Those doctors got in trouble, but it was the doctors that were like, I'm a dermatologist, and you need to get your 17 boosters. Those people were allowed to talk, and they're like, oh, look, trust the science. Let's trust these guys. It's like, wait a second, like, that's...
They are part of the Matrix.
You know?
Break free.
I remember when that happened. It's like, I remember when that happened. I asked my dad. My dad's like, you know, I know how a vaccine works, but here's another doctor that can answer. Here's actually 3 doctors I know who are more smarter than me on this topic. Right. It's like, what? Like, because like literally his answer is like, I know how hearts work, okay? Like, I know how that. And my dad's like, I hate my job, because every time I tell my patients, I'm like, lose some weight so you don't come in, and I don't have to risk every day of my career working on you.
My favorite COVID video on YouTube by far is Matt Pett made a video of which video game characters can survive coronavirus. That is my favorite video, and he has a PhD, so technically he's also a doctor. So. Okay. So that's
I'm
my
technically
favorite
a doctor
video.
too. It's Doctor of Law. It's a Juris Doctorate. So technically I'm a doctor too, baby. Yeah.
Dude, those are my favorite kind of videos, because, like, you know, Matt Pat is the most well-meaning guy, and then you see a title like that, I'm like, dude, how the...
How do you think of that? It's like, this is not a trend to hop on. Like, what are you doing?
Because I kind of sit there, I'm like, dude, you have a whole ass team that could have told you this might not have been the hottest idea to post. Like, holy shit. No, but you know, speaking of like YouTubers, one of the discussions that we had, and I really want to ask you this too, because as a lawyer, you've worked how many hours like a week on cases, on documentation?
Oh God, I'm projects sometimes, especially when they're really pumping, because I did a lot of project development and a lot of big commercial real estate. I represented Universal Studios when I was in Orlando. Like, a lot of this Epic Universe stuff that's coming out right now, I was like literally doing a lot of the entitlement work, the land development work, the purchasing for that. So like, it's really interesting. I can kind of talk about it now that it's no longer confidential, but I would put in some weeks, you know, 90-hour weeks easily. Like, that was not
that sounds almost as hard as streaming.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, hey, listen. I mean, your job doesn't sound like it was socially draining or anything. I mean, come on. As a lawyer, how often are you interacting with people on a daily basis? Really?
You know, to be fair, I did a lot more interacting with people, because I had to go to a lot of like public meetings and stuff like that. I was actually like, one of my skills is public speaking, which is why I like YouTube, right? But and most lawyers were like basement dwelling research nerds, right? You know, they never leave their office. Even the litigators, like the trial rarely happens in a civil context. Rarely, they always settle. So they're mostly in their office. They're mostly typing. They're mostly by themselves. They're mostly not out there socializing. We have social events, but what that really is, and it's kind of sad, is us sitting around and drinking like free whiskey sponsored by the Bar Association, you know, until we go home, pass out, and just wake up and do it again. You know, exactly. The bar sponsors the bar, you know. And yeah, no, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of research, a lot of sitting inside, and a lot of just working long hours when you need to.
So when you're saying your job was difficult,
It's happening.
I mean, do you stream by any chance?
You're trolling me right now?
I think he doesn't see where we're going with this exactly.
Oh yeah, no,
Well,
okay, yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
Yes, oh, yeah, yes. As a streamer, I am the most victimized category out there. I am peak on the victim chart. I am at the.
I'm just saying when you're streaming, I assume it's more draining than, I don't know, going to trial or something.
Oh God, it's the worst. Oh, streaming is the worst. I would rather be sent to the gulag than stream.
So I want to give like the context. Every time we discuss any type of this shit, it's always the context bros that jump into like with the flak jackets on into the comment section. So the context here is, you know, one of the largest streamers.
In Vosh's defense, okay.
We're not bringing up the horse stuff anymore. No. This is a topic that we can actually discuss on YouTube without being shadow banned. So. Hassan Piker, one of the largest streamers, been on the show, friend of the channel, you know, good guy. We all disagreed, I would say, about like his discussion of what I would consider socially draining. Like, we've come from jobs, everyone has come from a job here, right? When I look at YouTube and I look at live streaming, and I even like my worst stream, which was like 13 hours long years ago, you walk out of it, there is a socially draining aspect of it where you probably don't ever want to speak to somebody, but I feel like this is a job where you can walk into your office. You can literally walk to your office. You don't have to like drive anywhere. You don't have to do any of that bullshit. You walk to your office. You can swear all you want. You can be as raunchy as you want, and you make good money if you're successful. And it's money that you control. You're not kicking it back up to like a company and they're paying you a salary or something. Like, the fact that it was being compared to like retail work or anything, which is, by the way, the most soul-sucking, energy sapping shit you could imagine.
Specifically retail work, like that is like the breaker of people, right? I mean, it's 2 steps off from chattel slavery, right? I mean, it's pretty bad.
I mean, I'll say it right now, dude. I mean, a job at Staples meant that I would say that I was up and like that was one of the first gigs that I ever had. First job, very young. All right, when you're young, you are susceptible. Child labor laws, they exist, but let's be honest, they don't give a shit about us. They don't give a shit about the kiddos yet. We work, we get paid shit, and it's supposed to be like you're starting into the door. I have never ever experienced a job that is more soul-sucking and meaningless than that. And, you know, working other jobs like cybersecurity, anything, it's like, yes, I would feel like going to an office, putting in 10, 12-hour days, like working from, there are days where you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., right? Like 6 days a week. It is an industry that doesn't respect your time or whatever. You get paid good, but that, you have nothing else. So the fact that when you're streaming and you walk away and it's like, man, my social batteries are drained, I'm like, dude, I wouldn't even consider it the same.
You could complain about streaming, okay? You could say that streaming, it drains your battery, you're tired as hell, you stream for 8 hours, you're allowed to complain. That is your God-given right as an American, okay? As much as you hate the country. But the point is, you're allowed to complain. It's the terrible comparisons that just look awful. Like,
yeah, like if you just complain in a vacuum, that's fine, right? But when you start comparing it to work and saying it's worse than this, that's when I'm like, okay, now you lose me, bro, because you're not out here, like I said, you're not out there, you know, working the Oregon Trail, you're not out there on the Deepwater Horizon, you know, you're not out there working at Wendy's, you're not working.
All you guys watching my stream right now that are struggling to get Wi-Fi because you have an outpost in Afghanistan, all you guys.
Yeah.
It's not as socially draining as what I do. You should know.
I mean, it's one thing, like, if you, like, the thing is, like, I would probably sit there and be like, why is everyone complaining if he just walked out and said, yeah, it sucks when you stream for, like, 9 hours, dude. I feel like wiped at the end of the day, and
True.
I'm like, I get it.
Valid complaint.
Your eyes are dry, your head probably hurts.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what anybody is like when they're at a computer talking to, like, after a stream, sometimes my throat hurts. I don't complain about it. I'm just like, dude, that's what happens when you're speaking for hours on end, right?
Also, you recognize the fact that you have the ability to not stream.
Yeah, and that was one of I raised that point. I raised the point up. I'm like, because when I got like criticism from like the like 13-year-old communists in my like comment section, I'm like, hold on a minute. When you work a 9 to 5, you don't get to turn off and like go home. And I don't get to tell my boss, yeah, I'm tired. I'm gonna go home. No, they fire my ass if I do that. Yeah. On a stream, it's like the most beneficial thing is after you've made good money, you can just say, all right, guys, I'm done for the night. Good night, bye, take care, end the stream, and do your own thing. That is the most privileged, like, blessed job you could ever imagine, and I believe Hassan even said that too. He's like, yeah, this is a blessed job.
As a successful streamer, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're streaming, just to make barely ends meet, okay? If you're freaking working for nijisanji, okay? Like,
I mean, if you're in slave labor, sure.
Yes,
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
You're making 2% of merch revenue, Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I work for the Yakuza. Yeah, then your arguments are pretty much like
very
understandable.
valid
Yeah.
Yes.
Very valid. But like, if you're streaming, making literally millions of dollars, like millions of dollars.
My other thing too is like, even when I discuss the whole thing, it's like I'm like, look, as a business owner myself, YouTube is not like a primary job for me. Like as a business owner, property asset development, stuff like that. I go into work every day, right? Like my only off day is Sunday, and as a business owner, like, and I'll say it, Sunday isn't a day off. It's just a day to prepare for the week again. That's it. And I've always said, and like the funniest thing is, it's like I have to explain to people, I'm like, dude, as somebody that takes a risk, just bring the initial capital with my partners and start a company, and then we hire people later. Like, you gotta go, like, it becomes this esoteric discussion about like the means of production and capitalism. I'm like, dude, we're literally talking about like a stupid tape. That's it. Like, it's a dumb tape, Yeah. And I'm like, and when I sit there, I'm like, look, I can complain about a million problems in society. I know that it's way out of my scope to fix it. All I can do is try my best to live within it and make something out of it,
And beyond that, I mean, if you look at it, what is especially with the young people, I think they polled, everybody wants to be what? What's the number one thing they always...
A streamer.
A streamer.
They
YouTuber,
all want to be content creators, always.
But again, a lot of people want to be things that they don't realize how much work it is.
This is true.
So
This
that's
is true.
not necessarily an argument.
But it still makes it desirable, right? Other people desire and covet what you have. Now, obviously, a lot of times they covet it because they don't know what it entails. They don't know whether they'll have the skills for it or not. They just covet it to covet it. I mean, it happens with lawyers a lot. There's a lot of people I see in law school that are not really equipped to be lawyers because they don't know what the job really is. They watch Legally Blonde and they think that means they can go out there and kind of, rock the world and make $1 million and, and ride off with Chad. But obviously, that's not exactly what happens when you become a lawyer. You end up pinned behind a desk and most of your social life goes to shit, right? So I can see that, but at the same time, when you, like you mentioned, when you want to take a day off, it's even beyond that. You don't have to ask anybody, and it can be any time you want. So let's say you just covered something big, you've made big money, and you want to take 2 or 3 days off. Maybe you want to take a week off. It really doesn't matter that much. You can just do that, right? You can actually go ahead and do that if you need to do that, right? And you can actually set it up so that maybe you schedule content to come out, you have videos that are rolling out, you pre-recorded, you go on vacation. That's amazing. And you don't have to ask anybody but yourself, right? It's only incumbent on yourself to do that. That's kind of unparalleled.
It's probably stressful. I'm not saying it's not. It's the comparison that's just incredibly out of touch.
I think there's also a big difference too. Like, I kind of hate the conflation of like streaming and like YouTube content creation. Like, working on an investigation where you're like reading through the I'm gonna say it for the record, okay? You want to know something mentally draining? And you as a lawyer, Andrew, you can agree with this. Reading the Internal Revenue Code.
Oh yeah. I know. Yeah.
So every time in a video, I'm like, I'm not a lawyer, so please talk to a lawyer if you want actual like this is just me understanding it. So I'm reading through the IRC and I'm like, and that's what came into my head when I saw that take. I'm like, dude, you want to know something mentally, socially draining? Reading the Quran of like internal revenue documentation. It's like, holy shit. It's insane. Like I was reading through the IRC because I wanted to like understand like what the actual laws were broken, and I'm reading through it. I'm like, dude, there's like subsection 4, like there was one I was reading. It was like subsection 4 bracket I, subsection E2. I'm like, dude, how does a lawyer, like, how does an accountant look through this? Like, there's a big ass tooltip in the Internal Revenue documentation, like a tooltip this big that tells you, check the, please. It's like the DMV of documentation. It's like, oh, you want to find out what's there? Go to this page. Oh no, you go to that page. Go to this section. Open up that doc. Like, dude, what the?
Well, so two things there. Number one, they keep it intentionally dense because it's a gatekeeping instrument to keep the tax processing services and the tax lawyers in business. And number two, there's a reason why, for example, even when the
That
lawyers,
is so cringe.
I
think
know it's
that
true though.
It's
true.
insane to
It's
me
true.
that the law is not comprehensible for the layman.
It's
Like,
meant to
why,
be that way.
Why am I supposed to keep the law if I can't even understand it?
So you pay us money for it, Nux. That's why.
That's stupid. That's cruel. That's evil.
Well, yes,
Dude, that's literally that's accounting
horrible.
in general. That's
I'm just-
accounting in general.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And like, people won't want to say it. They're like, Andrew, why are you telling them shut up? I'm like, I don't care. What are you gonna do to me? Like, but the second part is, look, in tax law, you literally have to get a specific certification. I have to say, if I'm going through tax law, like, I am not a tax specialization lawyer because that's an extra degree. You actually, most people who do tax go get an extra degrry on top of their law degree, an extra 2 years or a year at least.
I did not know that.
Yes, in the U.S.
insane.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and it was so wild. Like, I go onto like the internet and I look at like the Eastern European countries. They have like a website portal, like just a simple website portal. It's like, this is what you owe. Pay us. I'm like, I wish it was that simple.
It's so complicated to pay taxes. I'm trying to give you my money, okay?
Dude,
Please.
like 2 years ago, the smartest thing we ever, you know, the most important person at our company is not me, not any other partner. It's the CFO. The CFO is an actual partner now.
Yes.
Because when we hired her like 2 years ago, we were just like, listen, I don't know how the fuck. We were doing like our taxes like morons. We were doing them like, you know, it's not like we weren't doing them like illegally or anything. I'm just saying like the way that we structured companies.
Careful now.
And the way that we did, well, the way that we did like the way that
We
we
were
did like
dumb,
operating.
not criminals.
yes.
No,
It's like this is tax
Yeah.
minimization, not tax evasion, right? Be very
No,
clear.
like,
one of them is legal, one of them's
like,
not.
The way that I can explain it the best is like we used to have like we didn't have holding companies.
Sure.
Like that was the funny. We didn't know like what the, because we always thought like holding companies was for like the really big companies, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
we had like all of our cash in like operating like companies, like our operating accounts. So holdco, opcos, whatever. And like it wasn't until our CFO came in and was like, "Have you ever been sued?" We're like, "No, why?" It's like, you probably should move your assets to something else. I'm like, we were learning about this shit like 2 years after we hired somebody who was wading
Not
us through.
keep your horse
Yeah.
with the taxes.
Yeah, dude. Dude, like literally, our tax lady was like, "So do you talk to the IRS?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, occasionally we do. We have U.S. stuff." It's like, why don't you have like separated business? Why are you giving the IRS all of your documents? Because we used to do that under the company. We would give them all of our Canadian information to the U.S. Internal Revenue Service. Like, why are you giving those Americans everything? Separate the branch. More.
But it's true though, because it's true because there's eventually going to be something that like both sides want, and you end up in these scenarios where you're
I've been
essentially double paying. You're like, okay, I've got to pay you
Yeah.
and I got to pay you because you're both interpreting your tax code different ways. So now you're just double paying, and at the end of the day,
Okay, so
it's going to
you-
fall on you. You can fight it as much as you want. You're going to end up paying, right? It's just
I
that's
am a
how
dual
it is.
citizen, okay? I'm American and I'm Canadian, okay? It's absolutely
sorry.
insane. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It's awful, okay? So listen, so there's a tax treaty between the United States and Canada. So I only have to pay taxes in Canada because that's actually where the higher bar of taxes is. And then I need to actually fill out all my taxes through the United States as well because they own a piece of your soul, okay? They're like super nijisanji, okay?
Right.
And they also own you a little bit. So the way it works is if you're a Canadian resident, then you have to pay taxes in Canada. However, if you're an American citizen, you have to pay taxes in America. So if you're a resident in Canada, you technically have to pay taxes in both. And that's where the tax treaty comes into. You only need to pay the country where it's more, and then you file taxes to the other country. But
Right.
here's where it gets insane. If you want to run a business, then you have to incorporate it, right? You make an LLC. Limited Liability Corporation.
Correct.
That works in
company.
the United States to help a lot in regards to not needing to pay taxes for business expenses and certain things. However, an LLC is not recognized by Canada. It has its own thing, and its own thing is not recognized by the United States. I
I didn't
cannot
know that. I
incorporate.
actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I can't
Oh, yeah.
incorporate my company properly, okay? Because no matter what I call it, I'm just gonna need to pay the extra money that I would be saving to the other country.
Oh, that's It's
Tell me why that makes sense.
It makes zero sense at all whatsoever. Zero.
Dude, and this is the thing about like anything like. I'm glad that you compared like the U.S. like government to nijisanji here because that's actually the best.
It's very accurate.
Listen, it's one thing we all can agree on, no matter what. If you're on both sides of the law, whether you're like doing your job completely legally or you're like multinational drug dealer, if you're not paying Uncle Sam his dues, they're gonna come at. Like it's insane when I was like researching the IRS.
They will
right?
terminate.
No, that is the number one thing. Like you know, you can f around with a lot of things, but not the tax man. Not the tax man. Right? I mean, ask Wesley Snipes. You know, I mean, you can do a hell of a lot, but don't mess with your taxes.
Well, you know, like the tax stuff. It's like it's funny because when I'm looking into the IRS, I'm like, they have the only division in any country's tax system where they have literal like actual agents, like combat like ready field agents. Like if you don't pay your tax and you hide in the Amazonian rainforest, they'll send badged armed agents like special operators, and they'll get their money.
Well, and if you're American, you're kind of screwed because you've got to report. You know, I live abroad. I'm in Asia, right? And you have to report all of your bank accounts. So, like, you know, all of your bank accounts that go over $10,000 are mandatory to be reported back to the U.S. So, like, you're going around, you're thinking, oh, I'm in another country. IRS is going in there and looking at every single one of those, which is kind of ridiculous.
Okay, you think my finances were screwed until here, Andrew? Get ready for this bombshell. When I first monetized my YouTube channel, I was in Israel. Okay.
Oh God.
So the way YouTube works is that they're only gonna allow you to open up a bank account in the country that you monetize your channel.
Okay.
I obviously had no idea this was the case. I had, I don't know, 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. I wasn't making any money, okay? I was making 12 bucks and 16 bucks here and there. I was on vacation and I monetized it because it's just like a little pop-up. It pops up, you click monetize, and that's fine. And then they said, okay, now attach an Israeli bank account. I'm not an Israeli citizen. So I had to go find out a way to make an Israeli bank account that I could attach to the YouTube account. And then I had so much money sitting in the Google AdSense at that point, around $250,000, that I wasn't able to access because I couldn't actually get them to send it to a Canadian or an American bank account. It had to be an Israeli one. I had to go back to Israel. I had to make an Israeli bank account for them to send the $250,000. And then guess what? Israel froze the bank account. Where's all this coming from? Who is this Google person that's sending
Look,
right? It is.
If
And I go to them with all these
account,
documents and everything. All these documents trying to prove it. No, literally nothing. And now I have more money accumulating in a Google AdSense account that's like, well,
Dude,
that's a different Israeli bank account.
I had the same situation here in like Canada. So like not with like at one point. So this is the scariest thing about tax people, right? Like when they call you up on the phone, it is the scariest shit. It's like your dad is calling you up and he's just visibly angry. So you get a call, it's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. This is my badge number. I'm calling from Vancouver. I'm like, hold on, lady, you're giving me your badge number? What the what's going on? She's like, we sent you a letter like in the tax website. So you go to the tax portal and like you open the little letter. It's like, you owe $200,000 in sales tax. It's like, so are you gonna pay that by the end of the week? I'm like, what? What do you mean I owe you $200,000? She like puts a flag down on the account. And like the way they scare you, like I almost was like, shit, I might as well just pay the bill. I don't know. Maybe I'll get it back. But I don't want to get in trouble with them.
$200,000 is not worth prison.
Well, I call up my CFO, and my CFO's like, nobody goes to prison, first off, and second of all, you give me her badge number. You give me her number right now, and I'll call. So like 30 minutes later, I'm sitting in my like office. I'm like, shit, what are they talking about? And she gives me a call. It's like, it's all good. I told her what you do. It's fine. I'm like, wait, you got it sorted out? She had thought that like apparently we were doing like sales work through like we were selling items on like Google or like through the ads or something. So she was wondering if we were collecting sales tax on everything.
Oh yeah, trying to get a VAT. Yeah.
Yeah. So like all my accountant did was she was like, I just sent her the Google AdSense terms and conditions, and she's like, oh, I get it. I'm like, why are you scaring him? It's like, what the? He's out there thinking that he owes like 6 figs to the government. I'm like, and that's like, dude, we all could make like a whole series of like just the IRS and like everyone's experience with them, like YouTubers and their stories.
I've had some nightmares.
It is nightmare because when they catch up, the thing is, in the beginning, people don't think about it, but it compounds, right? And the IRS is like Pepperidge Farms. They never forget, right? They 100% will come at you later. And there's a lot of this stuff there's not a statute of limitations on, so they'll roll this stuff out for a significant period of time.
I don't even want to like name names on certain influencers, but I've had like discussions where it's like, you know, I like talk to them, and we're at like a party.
Dude,
and,
what do your tax forms look like? Wait, you have to pay taxes?
No.
Literally, that was the funniest shit I ever heard. It was the funniest
We're
shit.
thinking of the same guy, I think.
I was in a I was in a party in like Los Angeles,
Oh,
right?
no,
But
never mind.
because we were just talking about like shots and we were just talking about like taxes and everything because we were from like Canada, and so the discussion was hilarious because I'm like, oh, how do you have your thing set up with the CRA? Like, do you do this, and that? And it's like, yeah, I don't know how to pay taxes yet. It's been 4 years since I've been doing YouTube. I don't really know how that process works. I'll get around to it eventually. And like in my head, I'm like, oh god, oh you sweet summer child. I'm like, wait a minute. You've been making all this money, and then when I'm like asking him, like, you set some aside for taxes, right? It's like, no, when I do it eventually, I'll pay that year off. And I'm like, oh, ooh, I don't want to tell you, but when they come down.
Also, I've spoken to someone about that also. Okay, so I think, I'm not going to mention any names here, but I was talking to someone and they're like, well, I don't like share my identity publicly, so I don't think like they'll know it's me. I'm like, oh, they'll know it's you. Oh,
Yeah,
they'll
will
know it's
trace
you.
that. They know.
Yeah, but
entirely
like,
know
but
that's
it's
you. Come on.
my money I'm making is through donations. Like, should they really get from my donations? Like, it's a present. I'm like, oh.
Well, even that discussion, they were just like, because I'm just sitting there, I'm like, do you have a bank account? It's like, yeah. Then they know. They already know.
They already know. It hits
That's
your
why
bank account. They
there's
know.
this-
Unless
there's
you're
this one
doing it in
political streamer.
cash. In cash or like gold bars. Like
There's
they
a
know,
political
right?
streamer. Oh God, I don't remember his name. Xanax or something. That's not his name. It starts with an X. He keeps all of his money in a PayPal account. He never wants to put it into the bank. Xander Hall. This happened to him. He only had a PayPal account. He would put all of his money directly into the PayPal instead of ever transferring it to a bank so that the government can't find it or something. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, like he at some point his PayPal got hacked because it was linked to his Steam and someone logged into his Steam and took all. It's like just.
I know something even wilder with the PayPal story because when I had another person who was like, because a lot of people I knew put their money into PayPal or whatever, they're like, because they were with MCNs and they would pay them to the PayPal as the wire. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there like, it's fine. PayPal's a bank. It's FDIC insured. I'm like, how much do you have in there? And it's like, maybe 300,000. I'm like, dude, you are over the limit for insurance. Government
Hate to break it to you. Yeah, hate to break it to you.
And I'm pretty sure PayPal's not FDIC insured. I would know that, but okay, sure.
Well, it's the same thing.
Go
It's the same thing with crypto, right? Like people will put it in the crypto, be like, oh, they don't see it. I'm like, did you cash that out through an exchange? Oh yeah, but through Coinbase. The government knows, right?
Dude, I love crypto stuff, dude. I love the information. I love the crypto community and the influences around it. There was a part of me where I was like, I hope these people start getting arrested or something happens. Now I'm just like, dude, I want them to keep scamming, dude. I love when influencers scam with crypto.
It just becomes giant news that everybody covers, and
it's just
no, that's not news. That's drama.
Yeah,
it's
true.
drama.
Full
It's
circle.
drama.
Full
It's drama when
circle.
people lose millions of dollars. I'm sorry. They get
Exactly.
scammed out of millions. That's just drama, right?
Did you hear about the financial scam drama that's been going on? Crazy.
Wait, which one? Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's the market we're kind of looking into. So I mean, I guess to whittle it on back to like the lads over at like nijisanji and this VTuber stuff too. I mean, the drama that is around actual exploitation of like workers and everything too.
Hey, Buddha, I'm gonna tell you a story. You have to tell me if you think this is a true story or I'm making it up right now off the top of my head. There's a VTuber agency that had a talent that wanted to quit to focus on her time as a full-time nurse. And so the agency said, if you do quit, then you're a quitter. And if you're a quitter, we are going to tell on your hospital that this is what you did, and we are going to make sure that they fire you, and you will not be able to get a job as a nurse anywhere unless you continue working for this agency. True or false?
I want to say this is false, but I know it's true.
Allow me to introduce you to Wactor, okay? This is not even their worst story.
No, they've got some like Harvey Weinstein type stuff going on there too. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's undress Wactor real quick. Let's try to understand this
We'll never understand.
evil. So Nijisanji, we know they're evil, right? These guys
Sure.
are the devil incarnate, is the way that I'm being presented. So like, what is kind of the
Super
rough...
devil. Right? They are the first ring of hell. Wactor's the ninth.
And they realize the power disparity is clearly on their side. They know they're in Japan. They know they have the power. In this case, with Wactor, a lot of the people they abused or rather took advantage of were like the Spanish-speaking content creators, right? So they were in other countries that was not Japan. They didn't have links to Japan. They couldn't kind of respond appropriately. There was also some, I think one was Thai as well, and other places outside of Japan. And they just fully abused the control because they knew at any point they can pull the rug. They knew at any point they could do that. And on top of that, they actually went as far as doxing their talent, right? They knew that, hey, your identity is something to put out there. Nijisanji didn't do this, right? Wactor actually hard doxed the people on Twitter, right? Just put out their termination notice, posted it just like Nijisanji, but with their real names. Right, that's a different level, especially for a VTuber, right? Like it goes far beyond just everyday being assholes.
I mean, that's not even like a redacted, like nothing,
No.
like just straight up.
That's aside from the fact that they had to there were talent that came out saying that they were forced to give sexual favors to people in management. Like
Straight up.
Like that was what they said.
And so, like, I guess the question is, like, what is the government of Japan doing about this? Because it just seems like the situation can't last.
Well, these are not Japanese citizens, so once again, to a certain level, the government of Japan, number one, may not know about the scope of it, right? Because remember, there's the hard language barrier. People forget, look, as much as people go over and find it fun to teach English in Korea and Japan and all that stuff, the English fluency, especially at the higher levels, is very, very low, right? And they're not hearing these stories from both sides. Even now with Nijisanji, we are just seeing this stuff being translated back into Japanese, right, from the English perspective, because they're like, why are people freaked out about this? They don't know. They're not getting that other side, right? So with Wactor, they just were not hearing this other side of the story. It's only now, I think, in the wake of Nijisanji that some of these stories are going to be retranslated back, and there may be some movement, there may be some push in the light of this, right? But before this, I really don't think there was as much pushback, because frankly, what is a poor foreign worker going to do? And by the way, when I worked in Korea, I talked with a lot of these company folks, and they would kind of say it that, look, our remedy is you go home. Right, is that you go home at a certain point and you're not going to complain to the labor board when we work you too long. You're not going to complain to the business bureau, right? Because you're going, you're leaving. You won't be here for a lawsuit. By the time the lawsuit is conducted, you're going to be gone. So that's what a lot of these people bank on, and frankly, there's a point to it. Are these livers, these VTubers that don't have any financial resources to begin with because they weren't given any money, gonna have hundreds of thousands for a multinational lawsuit? No, of course not.
Where again, even with the lawsuit, you have to contend with both legal systems
And also,
at the same
what,
time.
What's
Yes.
winning? There's no such thing as winning these lawsuits either.
No, you spend more money. You spend more money in litigating it than you would even gain. Your damages are going to be nothing, right? So you're going to collect a pittance compared to what you spend, and you're going to be emotionally, physically drained. You're going to be traveling to Japan for depositions. No, you don't want to do that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's somebody that's like faced the threat of 2 international lawsuits in the span of 2 consecutive months each, like discussing the financial cost of just an American and a Canadian lawsuit is.
Yeah.
And for anybody watching, it's like you're looking at minimum 6 figures. Like that's
So-
the minimum.
So yeah, people got on me a little bit about when I said the quote for an international lawsuit was like $500,000. I'm like, I think that's kind of conservative even for an international lawsuit, especially with like top tier lawyers like litigating over years where the company drags it out. It can go above that because once again,
Nijisanji is a $3 billion company. They're not, another YouTuber that's upset at you for calling them out.
right?
Yeah.
And also, you have to recognize, and I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do, but slander in America versus in Japan are very different. In America, slander is when you make a false statement about somebody to hurt their reputation. In Japan, it's when you make any form of statement with the intention to hurt the reputation. Even if it's true, it's still slander.
Yeah, so
So,
I have to give
Good
the
luck
I have to give
fighting
that.
that.
I have to get the I'm not a Japanese lawyer disclaimer like a million times because the spags will freak out on me. But the plain English reading, you can read a lot of this in English. Even if you say something that's true, in America, that's a defense to defamation. So if I say you're a criminal and you are a criminal, that is a defense. But that's not how it works in Japan. It doesn't just have to be true. It has to be true and support the quote-unquote public good. So there's this analysis that the judge has to do about whether what you said was in the good of the society as a whole, which is some fagoozy, which, once again, you can see. Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean?
So hold on. Let's do like a little check on this. Let's say that somebody was defrauding people out of millions of dollars in Japan, right? So if you were to make a statement and say this person was defrauding us millions of dollars, would that be beneficial because your statement is ultimately for the good of the people?
It depends, because maybe they were defrauding them for a purpose that was that like half of it went to charity and half of it was used in a proper way, but half of it wasn't. So because they don't want to make the half that was used properly look bad, they're like, okay, well, you shouldn't have said it in public. You should have quietly done this, right? You should have not made a public statement. Remember, defamation is public, right? So they're like, you should have done this another way. You get what I'm saying here? The biggest one would be like a mistress, right? Like saying, oh, this person has a mistress, right? For example, that's very wrong in many places over here because you're kind of outing something that should be private and you're making it public, right? And it's against the public good. It doesn't benefit the public for you to out somebody's mistress. So boom, you're hit with defamation, even if it's true.
Wild.
It's crazy. But it's you got to understand the culture. It's a cultural difference. There's the public-private face that is a huge thing over here in East Asia. That's just not a thing in the West. We don't have that same concept. So trying to understand that for a lot of people just blows their mind. I'm like, that's just how it is. You gotta live with that. That's reality.
No, I mean, like, for Asian cultures, being, like, from South Asia, being from India, it's like, I can understand, it's like, there's definitely, like, you want to keep things hush-hush, especially when it's something, that can be very, I guess, socially damaging, right? Like,
Correct.
somebody's, like, perception. Obviously, when you're in the States, it's like, we don't have that same perception, we don't have that same understanding. And I guess that's where the whole situation kind of like comes into a fold for a lot of these VTubers in general, because it's like, if you're from here, you want to make sure you get, what's fair to you, and obviously what's fair to you is never going to be what's fair to the company or the Japanese public.
And Japanese law is not the remedy for people in the West, right? It's just not the appropriate thing. People in the West, their expectations are too different, and that's why there's got to be some sort of arbitration or alternative, like having a subsidiary, because otherwise you're just never going to get a remedy that seems right. It's just going to constantly seem that way. And look, there'll be good corporations, right, that'll do the right thing, but there'll also be occasionally the whackers and the nijisanjis that just get away with stuff that really would be inexcusable if it happened in Canada or the US.
Well, the amount of money that's being generated over here, and like some of these like actual like VTubers are generating like what we would consider to be like a really well-oiled small business, When you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, you go beyond just like a celebrity. You go to somebody that can hire people and start small enterprises. I'm wondering, like, when is it going to be when like the state government or the federal governments here decide to enforce, like, hey, if you're going to make money here on talent, you need to be able to have some organization or
I think
some
they're
sort of
moving
structure.
that way. I know Canada's getting a little bit more protectionist with its regulation in regards to social media and content creation, but I do think we're going to move into an era where it says, okay, you've got to have something there. And look, we're also seeing the blossoming of companies that are starting up in North America, right? Famously, Phase Connect, right? Phase Connect is in Canada. I think we're going to see more of that because people are going to say, I don't want to sign with a Japanese company if this is the culture that is pervasive in Japan. And there's nothing that's stopping an American company from coming up other than they're going to need to build up their sponsors, they're going to need to build up their reputation, but it can be done. And this is a growing industry that's not going anywhere. So I think it would behoove folks to look at that as a potential area for expansion. Corporate expansion in terms of this being in the U.S.
Another streaming. It's another subset of content creation that's not going
Because as of right now, I think the situation is there's not enough choice, right? Like the largest organizations are pretty much structured in the same way. It's like, what are you going to do? Give up one predatory organization for another slightly less or maybe more predatory organization? It's like you really don't have... I mean, there are good companies. I don't want to say that there aren't, but it's just like the ones that have the most attention and the money to like bring on some of these newer talent, the most exploitative ones aren't. It unfortunately seems like they're the worst type of companies to be, working with, I would say.
Particularly the ones that are in Japan. I would say particularly the ones that are in Japan because of the cultural differences.
Yeah, because this whole time, like, when I started doing this, I thought nijisanji N, like the English-speaking variant, was at least like some American division,
I thought
right?
that too. I originally, when I first came on this and I knew nothing, I thought it was a subsidiary.
It's a
not.
Japanese company that's trying to tap into a new audience. Like that's literally it.
They
It's
never
the same
bothered to spin it off.
backend.
They never bothered to spin it off and to incorporate it anywhere, which shows you they weren't.
But that shows you, and I would say that comes across as almost malicious intent, because obviously if you were going to set up an organization here, and look, as a Canadian working even in the YouTube business, I work a lot with American companies, like companies that don't have any Canadian presence. It's fine because we are protected by laws that cover us across the border to an extent.
Sure.
Not with this. We understand that there's some protections a Canadian can have against an American company. We can use American laws to combat them if they're taking advantage of us. We understand that. With a Japanese company, it's like, dude, you're signing into a company that can terminate you pretty much at any given moment without any severance or anything of that nature. And shit, the emotional abuse that people go through, it's like, the whole argument is like, how do you litigate that in America? They have no American asset or entity. It's like, what are you going to do? Go up against a company for using you?
Yeah.
Well, in America and Canada, we share language. We share generally the same culture. I mean, you all have more poutine than we do, but I mean, other than that, like.